Most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they're running an operating system that was never designed for the life they want. At 25, I was busy, stressed, and constantly tired, but financially stuck. By 30, my income, freedom, and leverage looked completely different, not because I worked harder, but because I replaced 7 invisible rules that were quietly sabotaging everything. Most people only learn these after wasting a decade. If you start today, the math changes faster than you think. Most people are one conversation away from changing their entire life, and they'll still die living the same one. Not because they lacked access, not because they weren't smart enough, but because they avoided discomfort disguised as being polite, waiting for the right moment, or not wanting to bother anyone. Let me be direct with you. If your income, your opportunities, and your confidence haven't changed in years, it's not a motivation problem. It's a conversation problem. We've been sold a lie. They told us to work hard, keep our head down, and eventually someone would notice. That advice worked in factories. It does not work in a leveraged economy. No one notices effort, they notice positioning. And positioning only happens when someone understands who you help, what problem you solve, and why you are different. If people can't explain what you do for others in one clear sentence, you don't exist in the opportunity layer of society. You are invisible. For a long time, I thought networking meant knowing impressive people. I collected contacts, emails, phone numbers, and none of it moved my life forward. Here's why. I didn't build context, I only built proximity. And then I realized something uncomfortable. Most people don't help you not because they don't want to, but because they can't place you. They don't know where you fit. They don't know when to think of you. They don't know how you create value, so they forget you. Not intentionally, structurally. Here's the shift that changed everything for me. Stop trying to be interesting. Start being useful and clear. Confidence does not come from volume. It comes from precision. People with leverage don't ramble. They don't kind of do a few things. They speak in outcomes. And the moment I understood that, my conversation stopped being small talk and started becoming turning points. Here's the structure that works, not because it's clever, but because it removes friction from the listener's brain. You don't say, "I'm an entrepreneur. I do a little bit of everything. I'm working on some projects." That forces people to think. And busy people do not think for you. Instead you say, "I help this specific person solve this specific problem through this specific approach." That's it. No backstory, no justification. Clarity creates curiosity. And curiosity pulls questions out of people without you chasing validation. Now here's where most people fail. They understand the idea, but they never train the muscle. Talking to strangers is not about charisma. It's nervous system conditioning. If your body panics in uncertainty, your life will stay small. So you practice where the stakes are low. Ask questions that don't matter. In stores, in elevators, in waiting rooms. Not to network, but to teach your system that unfamiliar does not mean unsafe. Because the day the right conversation shows up, your body won't sabotage you. Here's something no one tells you. The people who win don't look for yes. They look for reps. Rejection is not a signal to stop. It's a signal that you are playing a bigger game. Every meaningful opportunity I've had came after dozens of ignored messages, unanswered asks, and awkward first interactions. Momentum does not come from success. It comes from exposure. If your world feels small, it's not because opportunity disappeared. It's because your circle of conversations stopped expanding. Money moves through people. Ideas move through people. Momentum moves through people. And if you are not intentionally stepping into new conversations, you are recycling the same outcomes. This is the first operating principle, because without it, none of the others activate. And the next one is the reason most people stay busy, but never actually move forward. Most people think they're stuck because they don't have enough time. That's not the real problem. The real problem is that they don't have enough energy to use the time they already have. They wake up tired. They work tired. They make decisions tired. and then they wonder why nothing changes. I used to believe productivity meant doing more, longer days, more hours, filling every empty space on my calendar. On paper, I looked disciplined. In reality, I was drained. I was busy, but not effective. Active, but not dangerous. Here's the hard truth. Time management is for employees. Energy management is for people who want leverage. You don't need more hours. You need better energy at the right moments. Every meaningful result in my life came from a small number of high-energy decisions, not endless effort. Once I understood that, everything shifted. High performers don't organize days. They design energy flow. They know when they think best, when they create best, when they execute best. And they protect those windows aggressively. Most people do the opposite. They start the day reacting. Messages, emails, notifications. They give their best energy away for free, and then try to build their future with whatever is left. That's backward. If you want different results, the first question is not, what should I do today? The question is, what deserves my best energy? For me, that meant one uncomfortable change. Everything meaningful goes on the calendar. Not just work, life, training, thinking time, recovery, important conversations. If it's not scheduled, it's a lie you tell yourself. Your brain is not designed to store commitments. It's designed to solve problems. When you keep everything in your head, you feel busy, but move slowly. When you put it on the calendar, clarity replaces anxiety. And here's where most people sabotage themselves. They treat their calendar like a wish list instead of a decision-making tool. They keep adding without subtracting. But every calendar is a reflection of priorities, whether you admit it or not. If you don't know what you're saying no to, every yes becomes expensive. People love to say freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want. That's a fantasy. Real freedom is knowing exactly what you're protecting and why. Every time you say yes to something random, you're saying no to something invisible in your future. And because you can't see it yet, you discount it. That's how dreams get traded for comfort. Here's one habit that quietly separates people who move fast from people who stay stuck. They review tomorrow tonight. Not obsessively, not emotionally, just intentionally. Before the day ends, they look at what's coming and ask one simple question. Does this flow? Am I spending my best energy on the right things? If the answer is no, they adjust before the damage is done. This isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. Energy leaks don't feel dramatic. They feel normal. Too many meetings, too many conversations that go nowhere. Too many tasks that look important, but change nothing. Over time, those leaks compound, and then people say they're burned out when what they really are is misaligned. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Most people don't lack discipline. They lack boundaries. They let other people decide how their energy gets used. They respond instead of design. And then they wonder why they're always tired but never fulfilled. The people who win don't have superhuman focus. They just stop spending energy on things that don't pay them back. They wake up and attack the highest leveraged task first. Not because it's easy, but because everything else becomes easier afterward. Momentum loves early wins. Once that first meaningful task is done, the rest of the day feels lighter. That's not motivation. That's physics. Energy flows where attention goes. If you want to change your life, stop asking how to manage your time better. Ask how to protect your best energy more aggressively. Because when your energy is aligned, progress stops feeling heavy. And without this principle, you can work forever and still go nowhere. This is why most people stay busy. And why the next principle is about feeding the one asset that controls all of this in the first place. Most people are waiting to be taught. They think clarity will come from a course, a mentor, a degree, or permission. It rarely does. The people who move fastest are not the most educated. They are the most self-directed. At some point, you have to accept a hard truth. No one is coming to organize your thinking for you. School teaches compliance. The real world rewards initiative. And the gap between the two is where most people get stuck. Every major upgrade in my income, confidence, and leverage followed the same pattern. I hit a problem I didn't know how to solve. I went looking for answers. I applied what I learned immediately. Not months later. Not when I felt ready. Immediately. Self-education is not about collecting information. It's about shortening the distance between question and action. Most people read, watch, and consume to feel productive. High performers consume to remove friction. There's a big difference. They don't ask, what should I learn next? They ask, what problem do I need to solve right now? And then they hunt for answers with precision. Books, conversations, experiments, failures, whatever gives them clarity fastest. Here's where most people waste years. They read to finish. They watch to complete. They take notes they never use. That's entertainment disguised as growth. Learning only becomes valuable the moment it changes behavior. If it doesn't alter a decision, a habit, or an action, it was noise. When I read, I'm not trying to absorb everything. I'm looking for one idea I can use today. One shift, one tool, one question. The moment I find it, the learning session is over. Execution is the test. If it works, I keep it. If it doesn't, I adjust. This approach does two things most people never experience. First, it builds confidence. Not motivational confidence. Evidence-based confidence. You stop hoping things will work and start knowing what does. Second, it trains your brain to see opportunities. When you consistently expose your mind to better thinking and then act on it, patterns start to appear. You notice inefficiencies. You notice leverage. You notice shortcuts other people walk past. That's not luck. That's trained awareness. There's also something uncomfortable about self-education that no one warns you about. It removes excuses. When you realize answers are accessible, procrastination becomes a choice. You can no longer blame lack of information. You either decided to look or you didn't. That responsibility is heavy at first, then it becomes freeing. Because once you trust yourself to find answers, you stop waiting for permission. You stop outsourcing your thinking. You become dangerous in the best way. Here's another shift that changed everything for me. I stopped asking what's the best book, and started asking what do the best people recommend for this specific problem. The quality of information matters, but relevance matters more. 3 targeted resources applied immediately will outperform a library you never use. Self-education also compounds. One idea improves your decisions. Better decisions improve your results. Better results improve your confidence. And confidence accelerates everything. This is why some people seem to grow faster every year. They're not smarter. They just built a system that turns curiosity into action. And once you have that system, you don't just learn faster, you adapt faster. In a world that changes this quickly, that's the real advantage. Without this principle, the previous ones fall apart. You can't manage energy if you don't know what matters. You can't create leverage if you don't understand systems. And the next principle is the one that turns information into insight. Most people think curiosity is a personality trait, something you're born with or without. That's not true. Curiosity is a skill, and like every skill, it compounds. The difference between people who grow fast and people who stay stuck is not intelligence. It's the quality of the questions they ask. Most people accept reality as it's presented to them. They see outcomes, but they never study causes. They react, but they don't investigate. And because of that, they keep repeating patterns they don't understand. Here's the uncomfortable part. If you don't ask questions, you're not being polite. You're being passive. And passivity is expensive. Every system around you was designed by someone who asked more questions than you did. Someone challenged assumptions. Someone asked why this works, why this fails, why it's done this way instead of another. Curiosity is how you borrow other people's decades. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early on, I used to talk too much. I thought adding value meant sharing opinions, stories, and advice. What I didn't realize was that I was learning nothing new. Then I noticed something about people I respected. They spoke less, they listened more. They already knew what they knew. They were interested in what they didn't know yet. That shift alone changed the trajectory of my growth. Because when you ask better questions, people reveal how they think. And how someone thinks is more valuable than what they say. Here's how curiosity quietly turns into money. When you ask customers why they didn't buy, you learn friction. When you ask customers why they did buy, you learn belief. When you ask your team why they prioritize certain tasks, you learn leverage. Most businesses don't fail because of bad ideas. They fail because no one asked the right questions early enough. Curiosity collapses trial and error. Instead of guessing, you observe. Instead of assuming, you validate. Instead of repeating mistakes, you refine. But curiosity isn't just external. The most powerful questions are internal. Why did that trigger me? Why do I avoid this decision? Why does this situation drain me? Most people never ask themselves these questions. They distract, they rationalize, they blame, but the world is honest. It will keep showing you where you're not free. Patterns in your reactions point directly to your blind spots, and blind spots limit income just as much as bad strategy. Here's something most people miss. Curiosity feels uncomfortable because it threatens identity. If you ask why, you might discover you've been wrong. You might have to update how you see yourself. That's why people avoid it. But growth requires friction. The people who accelerate fastest are not the most confident. They are the most willing to be wrong. I'll give you a simple example. I once walked into an environment where everything was working better than mine. Instead of admiring it silently, I asked questions. Why is this structured this way? Why is this incentive aligned like that? Why does this create better behavior? I took the principle, not the copy, and applied it in my own world. That single moment of curiosity saved me years of experimentation. That's the power of asking. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You need to be the most interested. Because curiosity is how you build mental models. And mental models are how you make better decisions under pressure. Without them, you react emotionally. With them, you respond strategically. Most people think money is about confidence. It's not. It's about understanding. Understanding systems. Understanding people. Understanding yourself. And all of that starts with questions. If you want to grow faster, start here. Speak less. Listen more. Replace statements with questions. And don't just ask to reply. Ask to understand. Because every level you want to reach already has answers. They're just hidden behind questions most people never think to ask. And without this principle, information stays shallow. The next one is what turns understanding into real progress. Most people say they want feedback. What they actually want is validation. They want to hear that they're right, that they're on the right path, that everything will work out. That mindset is expensive, because progress doesn't come from being right. It comes from being corrected early. Here's the truth most people avoid. Assuming you're right is one of the fastest ways to stall your growth. Markets don't reward confidence. They reward adjustment speed. The people who move fast are not attached to their ideas. They're attached to results. I learned this lesson watching smart people fail. They worked hard. They cared deeply. They believed in what they were building, and no one wanted it. Not because the people were wrong, but because their assumptions were never tested. They fell in love with the idea, instead of listening to reality. Feedback is how reality speaks back. And reality doesn't care about your intentions. It only responds to behavior. Most people wait too long to ask for feedback. They build in isolation. They polish before validating. They hide until they feel ready. By the time they finally ask, they've already burned time, money, and energy. High performers do the opposite. They expect something to be wrong from the beginning. They don't ask, "Do you like this?" They ask, "What would stop this from working?" That question alone changes everything. Because it removes ego from the equation. You're no longer defending an idea. You're stress testing it, and stress-tested ideas survive. Here's where feedback becomes dangerous for most people. They ask the wrong people. They ask friends who want to be supportive. They ask family who want to be kind. They ask people who will never use what they're building. That feedback feels good, and it kills progress. The only feedback that matters comes from people who live the outcome you want. Customers, users, people spending time, money, or attention. Everyone else is noise. If someone wouldn't pay for it, use it, or rely on it, their opinion is entertainment, not data. Another mistake people make is asking for feedback too late. They wait until the decision feels heavy. By then, correction feels like failure. But early feedback feels light. It's just information. That's why people who grow fast shoot small tests early. They don't load the cannon first. They fire small shots, watch where they land, and adjust. That process isn't cautious. It's efficient. Feedback also forces clarity. When someone says no, you learn faster than from 10 yeses. No reveals friction. No reveals confusion. No reveals misalignment. And every no, if you're paying attention, makes the next attempt stronger. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Feedback will challenge your identity. It will force you to separate who you are from what you're building. Most people never make that separation. So when feedback comes, it feels personal, and they shut down. High performers don't do that. They treat feedback like a mirror, not a verdict. A mirror shows you what is. It doesn't define who you are. Once you internalize that, feedback stops hurting. It starts accelerating you. There's also a discipline to receiving feedback well. You don't explain. You don't justify. You don't argue. You listen. Because the goal isn't to be understood. The goal is to understand. Even bad feedback is useful. It tells you how people think. And how people think determines how they act. When you learn to listen without defending, you gain an unfair advantage. You start seeing patterns others miss. You stop guessing. And momentum builds quietly. This principle changes everything when you apply it consistently. Your learning curve shortens. Your mistakes get cheaper. Your confidence becomes grounded, not in hope, in evidence. Without feedback, curiosity stays theoretical. With feedback, it becomes precision. And the next principle is what allows that precision to compound instead of fade. Most people overestimate what intensity can do. They believe that if they push hard enough, long enough, everything will change. So they sprint, they work late nights, they make dramatic promises. They try to transform everything at once, and then they disappear. Not because they're lazy, but because intensity burns fuel faster than it builds structure. Consistency is quieter. It doesn't look impressive in the moment, but it's the only thing that compounds. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your future is built by what you repeat, not what you attempt once. One perfect week won't change your life. 100 ordinary weeks will. High performers don't rely on motivation. They design systems that work even when motivation is gone. They don't ask, "How do I feel today?" They ask, "What is non-negotiable?" That shift alone separates amateurs from professionals. Intensity feels good because it gives the illusion of progress. You feel productive. You feel committed. You feel different. But consistency actually creates results. And results don't care how dramatic your effort was. They only reflect what was sustained. I've seen this pattern everywhere. People start strong. They overhaul routines. They set unrealistic schedules. They aim for perfection. Then life happens. Energy dips. Unexpected problems appear. Discipline gets tested. And the system collapses. Consistency survives chaos. It's built to function on bad days. It assumes you'll be tired, distracted, uninspired. That's why it works. Consistency lowers the friction to show up. And showing up, even imperfectly, is how progress accumulates. Here's where most people sabotage themselves. They attach consistency to mood. If they feel good, they act. If they don't, they wait. But the brain doesn't respond to intention. It responds to repetition. The moment you tie behavior to emotion, you lose control. Professionals tie behavior to identity. This is just what I do. No debate, no negotiation, no drama. That mindset removes resistance. And resistance is what drains energy. Another mistake people make is thinking consistency means doing more. It doesn't. It means doing less, reliably. Small actions repeated beat big actions abandoned. A simple system you trust will outperform a complex plan you avoid. Consistency also protects you from burnout. Burnout doesn't come from doing too much over time. It comes from doing too much without structure. When effort is predictable, stress drops. When expectations are clear, pressure becomes manageable. That's why sustainable growth feels boring. And boring is a feature, not a flaw. Boring means stable. Stable means scalable. And scalable is where real leverage lives. This applies far beyond work, relationships, health, skills, money. Nothing grows from intensity alone. Everything grows from consistency. If you're waiting for the perfect moment, you've misunderstood the game. Momentum is created by movement, not by readiness. The people who win long-term are not the most talented. They are the ones who keep showing up long after the excitement fades. Consistency also sharpens feedback. When you act regularly, patterns become visible. You can see what works, what doesn't, what needs adjustment. Without consistency, feedback is noise. With it, feedback becomes signal. This is where the principles connect. Curiosity asks the right questions. Feedback gives you answers. Consistency turns answers into outcomes. Remove consistency, and everything resets. Add it, and progress becomes inevitable. The next principle is what ensures that consistency doesn't turn into stagnation. Most people believe discipline is a personal trait, something you either have or you don't. That belief quietly keeps them stuck. Because behavior is not driven by willpower, it's driven by environment. If discipline alone were enough, everyone would already be successful. But discipline is fragile. It breaks under stress, fatigue, and distraction. Environment doesn't. Your environment is always working on you, even when you're not paying attention. It nudges your behavior. It reinforces habits. It shapes what feels normal. And what feels normal eventually becomes automatic. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you keep failing at the same things, it's not because you're weak. It's because your environment is stronger than your intentions. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And systems live in environments. Look around your life. What's easy to do? What's hard to do? What's constantly distracting you? Those answers explain your results more accurately than motivation ever will. High performers don't rely on self-control. They reduce the need for it. They design environments where the right action is the default action. They make bad habits inconvenient, good habits obvious, progress frictionless. That's not laziness. That's intelligence. Willpower is a limited resource. Environment is renewable. Every decision you remove is energy you save. Every distraction you eliminate is focus you recover. Most people try to fight temptation. Smart people change the battlefield. Here's a simple example. If your phone is always within reach, distraction is inevitable. If junk food is visible, temptation becomes constant. If negative voices surround you, doubt feels justified. None of that requires failure of character. It's just exposure. Environment works through repetition. The more you see something, the more normal it feels. The more normal it feels, the less resistance you feel toward it. That's how habits form without effort. This applies to people too. Your standards are shaped by who you spend time with. Your pace is influenced by what you see modeled. Your ceiling is often borrowed from your environment. If everyone around you complains, stagnation feels acceptable. If everyone around you improves, growth feels inevitable. You don't need more pressure. You need better inputs. One of the hardest lessons to accept is this. You can't build a high-performance life in a low-performance environment. Eventually, one will give. Either the environment changes, or you do. That's why progress often feels lonely at first. Because upgrading your environment means outgrowing familiar patterns. Familiar doesn't mean healthy. It just means repeated. Another mistake people make is waiting to deserve a better environment. They think success comes first. Then they'll upgrade their inputs. That's backwards. Environment is what pulls you forward when effort drops. It supports you on bad days. It stabilizes you when confidence wavers. That's why small environmental changes create outsized results. Move the phone out of the room. Prepare tools in advance. Surround yourself with signals that remind you who you're becoming. You don't need radical change. You need alignment. When environment and goals point in the same direction, progress feels lighter. When they don't, everything feels harder than it should. Here's where all principles converge. Curiosity makes you aware. Feedback keeps you honest. Consistency builds momentum. Environment sustains it. Miss this principle, and everything else leaks energy. Apply it, and growth becomes the path of least resistance. The goal isn't to fight yourself. The goal is to design a life where becoming better is automatic. And once you understand that, discipline stops feeling like a battle. It becomes a byproduct.